The Marvel Cinematic Universe films are awesome, but their stories/timelines are kind of all over the place. So today, I'm taking a look at the MCU, or the Avengers movies, in chronological order. Oh, and also, in case it wasn't obvious, spoiler alert for every MCU movie. Now, let's begin. So, around 3000 BC, these evil beings called the Dark Elves attack this place, trying to conquer the Nine Realms. But they are stopped by the Asgardians. Also, Odin traps the Ether, a mythical substance of immense power, deep down where no one can find it. Hopefully. Then, in 965 AD, Odin and the Asgardians fight off the evil Frost Giants, who are trying to take over Midgard, aka where you are right now. The Frost Giants are defeated, Odin adopts a baby Frost Giant called Loki, a peace treaty is made, and the Casket of Ancient Winters, which is what the Frost Giants get their power from, is hidden away by Odin, where no one can find it. Hopefully. Then, in around 1400, Odin hides this cube of immense power called the Tesseract in Norway, where no one can find it. Hopefully. Then, a little bit later, in 1918, Steve Rogers is born on the 4th of July, just when he thought he couldn't be more patriotic. Then, 12 years later, in 1930, Dr. Erskine, yeah, this guy, he starts his research on the super soldier serum. Also, in this same year, Steve Rogers and James Buchanan Barnes meet, and they become best buds. Hopefully that won't ever change. Okay, so now we get to the historic stuff, like World War II breaking out, and in 1940, a Nazi guy called Johann Schmidt becoming the Red Skull by injecting himself with a version of Dr. Erskine's serum. All taught in history class. Around Christmas of 1941, Steve Rogers tries to enter the US military to fight in the war, but is rejected. 1 year later, Schmidt discovers the Tesseract. Thanks, Odin. However, 1 year after that, Dr. Erskine lets Rogers into the army to see if he has the potential for something big. And he does. So in June of 1943, Steve Rogers gets a bunch of drugs pumped into him, and gets even more patriotic. Yep, Captain America. For the next few years, Cap fights in World War II with his Howling Commandos, but loses Bucky along the way. Cap then defeats the Red Skull in 1945, who was now trying to destroy, well, a lot of stuff, using the Tesseract. Cap goes down into the ice, and so does the Tesseract. A bit later, however, Howard Stark finds the Tesseract while looking for Rogers. Speaking of Stark, in 1964, his Stark World Expo is held. Yay. Bruce Banner is born in 1969, and Tony Stark is born 2 years later in 71. Then, in 1988, after his mom dies, a kid called Peter Quill is abducted by a blue alien called Yondu and his space pirates, who want to eat him, but don't. Now, Tony Stark's parents die in a car crash in 1991, so Tony inherits the company and starts running it by the next year. On New Year's Eve in 1999, Tony Stark is in Bern, Switzerland, where he forgets to meet some weirdo called Aldrich Killian. Whatever. He was just a nerd. He won't do anything. Anyway, in 2006, the now scientist Bruce Banner takes part in a gamma experiment, which fails. This results in every time his pulse goes really fast, he turns into the enormous green rage monster known as... Yeah, a few years later, now billionaire Tony Stark is captured by the terrorist group known as the Ten Rings, after showing off his newest missiles. He escapes, using a weaponized suit of armor that is powered by this blue thingy in his chest called an arc reactor. And, after seeing the damage his weapons do, he decides to turn that suit of armor into... Iron Man. After a lot of building and upgrading and such, he has a suit of armor that can fly, use repulsor blasts, and of course, has a... tank missile! Stark then defeats this evil, bald businessman guy called Obadiah Stane, aka Ironmonger. After that, Stark continues to upgrade his suits, and his artificial intelligence Jarvis, and just keeps being Iron Man. While this was happening, Aldrich Killian, yeah, that nerd, well, he started experimenting on people with extremis, which is really complicated and confusing, but basically it heals people's disabilities and gives them a bunch of different fire powers. Also, after announcing to the world that he is Iron Man, Tony is confronted by some weird guy called Nick Fury. Anyway, Bruce Banner has been doing a good job of hiding from the government, who kind of want his guts, until he cuts his hand. Some of his Super Hulk blood gets into a bottle of soda, which ends up killing some poor old gentleman. The government finds out where the bottle was from, track down Banner, and the manhunt begins. Well, more like a Hulk hunt. Tony Stark then continues to do Tony Stark things, like opening up the Stark Expo 2010, appearing before the Senate, and promoting his girlfriend to CEO of his company. He also meets a mysterious person called Natalie Rushman. Anyway, to sum up the next part, Iron Man 2. This crazy Russian guy called Ivan Vanko attacks Stark at the Monaco Grand Prix. Stark discovers a new element and defeats Vanko, aka Whiplash. While this was happening, Thor, who is the actual son of Odin, is coronated, although the ceremony is interrupted by someone stealing that casket of ancient winters. Thanks, Odin, Thor sees this as an act of war and goes to attack the Frost Giants. Due to his insolence, Thor is banished to Earth by Odin, because, well, there was kind of a peace treaty between the Asgardians and the Frost Giants. So Thor ends up in New Mexico without his powers, and his hammer is found by the locals. Also, Loki discovers that he is not actually Odin's son, and he is actually a frost giant. So he gets kind of upset. Also, during this, Thor breaks into the S.H.I.E.L.D. place where his hammer is being kept, and is captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. Loki comes to visit him in this time. Thor gets out from the S.H.I.E.L.D. place, and bonds with an Earth person called Jane Foster. Speed round. Bruce Banner is attacked by the US military and hulks out. Loki sends the Destroyer to attack Thor and the people of New Mexico, but Thor, proving that he is worthy, stops it and destroys the Destroyer. Thor goes back to Asgard, faces Loki, and destroys the Bifrost, aka the rainbow road that leads to Earth. Loki falls into the abyss of nothingness, but is brought back by Thanos / the Other / the Chitauri. Meanwhile, this guy called Emil Blonsky, who's been after the Hulk for a while, gets a dose of super juice and becomes this abomination. Seriously, his name is Abomination. He and Hulk duke it out in Harlem in the coolest scene from that movie. Hulk wins and goes off to live in Bella Coola. Sometime after this, Tony Stark meets with General Ross, a guy who was also hunting Hulk for a while, and talks to him about the Avengers. At some point between this time and the Avengers, Banner goes from Bella Coola to India, where he works as a doctor and gets substantial plastic surgery and gains a bit of weight. Then, in 2011, they finally find Steve Rogers in the ice. He wakes up and immediately starts punching things. He's approached by Nick Fury about the Avengers. So anyway, the Tesseract is controlled by S.H.I.E.L.D., but Loki, who had enough time to plot his revenge, activates it from somewhere in another area of space. He comes through a portal created by it and takes control of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents like Hawkeye and scientists like Eric Selvig. He then steals the Tesseract and runs away. This causes Nick Fury to frantically assemble the Avengers, starting with Natalie Rushman, whose real name is actually Natasha Romanoff, whose other name is Black Widow, goes and gets Banner from India. Phil Coulson, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., goes to get Tony Stark, and Fury himself goes to the gym to get Captain America. The Avengers, minus Thor, now come together to the helicarrier to find Loki. Loki appears in Germany and is stopped by Iron Man and Captain... well, not really. Thor comes down and picks a fight with Iron Man and Cap, but eventually agrees to help them. Loki is taken captive on the helicarrier, but escapes after firing up all the Avengers. The Avengers discover that S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to use the Tesseract to make weapons of mass destruction. Then, Hawkeye and his evil friends attack the helicarrier, and basically, Loki escapes. Hulk is thrown to the ground, and Thor is also thrown to the ground. However, they all assemble once again to stop Loki and his evil alien army. Iron Man almost dies, but doesn't, and they all eat shawarma. The Avengers then disassemble, with all of them going their separate ways, mainly Thor and Loki going to Asgard. The Bifrost is repaired, and Jane Foster finds the Ether. Thanks, Odin. The Dark Elves are reawoken from their slumber, and Malekith, the biggest, baddest Dark Elf, attacks Asgard with his buddies. Basically, in the end, Malekith takes the Ether, but is defeated by Thor. Thor then declines the throne, but it turns out that he wasn't talking to his dad, he was talking to Loki! Gasp! The Ether is then given to this weirdo called the Collector, who collects things, like things of immense power, Dark Elves, and mutated ducks. The Collector contacts an alien servant of Thanos called Gamora to get a powerful little ball for him. Meanwhile, Aldrich Killian is back, and he's doing bad things. He comes to Pepper Potts with his ideas, and is once again rejected. Also, this terrorist called the Mandarin is being, well, a terrorist. So, Happy Hogan, Iron Man's chief of security / bodyguard, is attacked by extremist soldiers of the Mandarin, and Tony then gives his address to the terrorist. Why you would do that is beyond me. So, his house is attacked, and Tony flies off. In the end, Tony finds the Mandarin and finds out that he's just an actor called Trevor Slattery, and Aldrich Killian is actually the Mandarin. Tony defeats Killian and all of the extremist buddies, and then he has the operation that removes his arc reactor and the shrapnel in his chest. Now, Captain America works for S.H.I.E.L.D., but he doesn't agree with some of the things S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing. Also, an assassin appears called the Winter Soldier who goes to kill Nick Fury. Turns out the Winter Soldier is his buddy Bucky, who got brainwashed. Also, Cap then finds out S.H.I.E.L.D. has been taken over by Hydra, which was the Nazi division led by the Red Skull, which he fought back in the day. He manages to stop Hydra, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is shut down, I suppose. However, Cap doesn't kill the Winter Soldier, aka Bucky, because, well, in his own words,
"'Cause I'm with you to the end of the line."
Cap then falls but is saved by Bucky. Bucky is later seen going to a museum and finding out who he truly is. Cap and his new best friend Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, set off to find him, as Nick Fury goes to Europe and Black Widow goes to wherever she goes. Guess it'll take a while to assemble these guys again. By the way, can someone please tell me what happens to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. now? I've only managed to watch 4 episodes, but what really happens? Does it become like Agents of Hydra or something? Also, this weird guy called Baron von Strucker is holding 2 captives. The mutants, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. No, not that one. Yeah, there we go. Oh, hey, meanwhile, that kid called Peter Quill who got kidnapped by aliens? Yeah, well, he's grown up and become sort of an intergalactic thief. He steals that ball that Gamora sent to get. Gamora works for Thanos, the evil titan of evilness, and his servant Ronan, but she planned to betray them because they're jerks. She ends up trying to steal the ball from Quill on a planet called Xandar, but is confronted by the traveling duo Rocket Raccoon and Groot. All 4 of them go to jail but escape, along with a guy whose family was murdered by Ronan called Drax the Destroyer. They form a team called the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they stop Ronan from wiping out billions of lives. And that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe in chronological order, from 3000 BC to 2014. Boom! Now, what's your favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe film? Be sure to tell me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe.